I don't think I really need to introduce a measurement panel because pretty much it's the thing that's on everybody's mind. One of the things that we were trying to do with our measurement panel for the post-cookie world, however, is really direct the discussion towards what is working for people. What are the technologies and the techniques that people are using and learning to use right now that are trying to at least anticipate, if not solve for, the post-cookie world. To take the lead on this, we have my colleague Lisa Singer, who you met yesterday. I'll just let them start. Lisa, take it away.
Thanks, Steve. So, well, first, before we do get started, I mean, I know when we were talking about it yesterday also, just that cookies going away has been coming on for a while, and people, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world because it's forcing people to become more creative, but there are challenges. So we are going to talk about that. But before we get into that, I just want, if you can introduce yourselves so everyone knows who you are and what you're up to.
Hello, everyone. Geoff Litwer. I'm the Vice President of Programmatic and Display Media at Tinuiti. I've been there for 4 years. We grew up in the performance space and have grown quite a bit over the last 5 years. When I joined, we were 200 people, and today we're about 1,300. So excited to be here and share the stage with other industry vets.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Perfect. Hey, everybody, I'm Nish, Desai, Group Director of Technology and Operations at Xaxis. I've been at Xaxis this fall will be 15 years. Kind of an anomaly in advertising to stay in one place for so long, but they've been good to me, so you know, no reasons to leave anytime soon. I handle all of our technology integration, so data ETL. I also work heavily with our analytics and partnerships teams to source new data opportunities, as well as solve any analytics or measurement challenges.
Okay, so, well, getting into the challenges, Nish, why don't we start with you in terms of what have been the challenges in terms of what metrics are you now going to, and what was your biggest challenge to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest change, I think, is getting advertisers to stop looking at measurement in a one-to-one standpoint, because we're obviously going to lose that. The other thing, too, that we've been stressing to advertisers over the past couple of years is that cookie-based measurement has never really been perfect. The Safari issue has existed for probably a decade or so. And there's always been users who either don't have cookies or there's high cookie churn for a subset of users. So cookie-based measurement hasn't been perfect ever. And so one of the biggest challenges has been getting advertisers off of those metrics and looking at new metrics that have additional value. So we're investing a lot more into impression and click data, where we're actually serving. We're also doing a lot more analytics on our campaigns in flight as opposed to after campaigns end, to retune and optimize not just the audience that we're buying, but actually the inventory and other metrics in terms of day parts, day of week, things like that, that are just as valuable, if not more.
And so, Geoff, for you, I know you actually, when we did speak, you were saying how it has been coming on. You're one of those who have been working on it and have been finding more creative ways to find your metrics and really to figure all this out. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure, but just real quick, it's always interesting coming and speaking on these panels and sitting next to someone who we tend to think of each other as competitors, and do they think differently? Do we think the same thing? Can we align? What's been refreshing in some of the prep conversations for this panel, talking to Nish, is that we are very much aligned on many of these things. So I'm not going to repeat everything that he said, but I want to talk a little bit about the silver lining that Lisa hinted at. And while there are certainly challenges, we actually think that this is one of the most exciting moments for this industry to finally move away from things that we've all wanted to move away from for a long time. We joke a little bit, right? Every marketer, every performance marketer wants to be a brand marketer and do fun and splashy things. This is our moment to flip this challenge on its head and use it as a way to excite our clients about doing all of those things that they've wanted to do and be in premium quality environments and to deliver immersive experiences to their audiences. So yes, right, to us this is not something new. I'm sure many of you, this is not the first time that we're talking about cookies going away. I think it's been about 5 years. And so using cookie solutions, Jay, I'll give you a plug, whether it's partners like distillery, right, or thinking more seriously about custom algorithms, this thinking and these strategies have been built into client plans for a long time. We've found interesting scalable solutions and ways to move away from the shackles or chains of the cookie.
Well, you also talked about when you were also getting offline data as well and being able to look at things holistically. Is that,
Sure.
how are you doing that?
So again, talking about these artificial KPIs, like directly attributable last click, knowing that those metrics are not driving business, right? The idea of programmatic being this magical thing that can take an ugly banner ad, get it in front of a person and get them to buy something immediately, right, is not really reality, right? And so how do we move away from that and actually drive business outcomes by using offline data that allows us to do that, right? And thinking about using that data in real time, not waiting for that 3-month lag, as well as incorporating that offline data into some of the custom algorithm work that we're able to do to be able to optimize in real time those campaigns based on that data.
Yeah, I think outcomes is the key word there, right? Like I think at the end of the day, an advertiser's goal is whatever their advertiser's goal is, regardless of what your KPI is in between. Whatever you're optimizing towards is never truly their actual outcome that they're looking for, right? Whether it's selling a product or getting someone into a dealership or a showroom, outcomes is really what an advertiser cares about. And we've propped up artificial metrics to kind of fill in those gaps because we didn't have all of the data to really tell an advertiser whether our media was performing effectively. And I think now that we're looking at a new ecosystem where that data is advertisers' first-party data is going to be pulled in more readily. Advertisers are more cognizant that they need to collect this data, that they need to build a relationship with their consumer, their customer, their user. Is really like we're throwing out metrics that we've been using for 30 years to define a whole new set of qualitative metrics that are going to actually lead to an advertiser's outcome, which hopefully for all of us means more spend.
Well, so what channels are you leaning into? Where are you seeing the best results from?
We're seeing a lot of, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily better results in one channel versus another. I think we're seeing interest in channels where advertisers have either moved out of historically or have shied away from. We're seeing a lot of interest in things like gaming. We're seeing an uptick in CTV, in out-of-home, in audio. We're actually getting a lot of interest in podcasts and not just streaming or linear audio. So a lot of these new channels are coming up and at least in conversations, even if we're not heavily investing there yet. And we're seeing a lot of it depends on the advertiser, right? You're gonna see performance improvements in one area depending on the advertiser versus another. So out-of-home may work very well for someone that's trying to drive dealership or showroom visits, whereas audio may drive better results for someone that is trying to drive users to purchase.
Well, now, how about you for Geoff? You were talking about offline data and also just looking at things more holistically and taking everything into play. So what channels are you looking at? Are you doing the same in terms of, rather than looking at each channel and what they're doing, are you trying to sort of do an overall picture of, does that make the plan successful by looking at everything together?
Before I go there, I just want to touch on the qualitative metrics piece because I do think this is like another exciting opportunity that's probably going to shift things in this industry more than anything because we've been selling this idea that we can be audience first or audience driven and we will reach that audience wherever they are across thousands or tens of thousands of sites. That long tail inventory that many of you are looking at on a daily basis in your reporting and really maybe not sure what those sites actually are because you don't go there yourselves, right? And I think we do think that this is the beginning of the end of the long tail, right? You can't run long tail and actually look at qualitative metrics, right? And so I do believe this is going to bring us back to more curated publisher lists that are smaller. And we will invest more dollars in those environments that can deliver in those qualitative metrics. Someone mentioned attention units. Adelaide, who was Parsec back in the day, we are very excited about that metric. It's something that we're working with some of our verification partners that are also pulling in some of that data, right? Helping our clients spend more time in front of those advertisers because The data is there, but everyone's afraid sometimes to talk about going by the gut, right? As marketers, we know that if we can spend more time with our messaging and our story in front of audiences, that it is going to have a bigger impact and drive that ultimate outcome. Sorry if that was long-winded, Lisa. I will go back to channel, I promise.
Well, no, I'm curious. Actually, why don't you say what you were going to say? But I want to see how you're putting that all together. What are the main metrics that you are looking at then?
Sure. So I think in a lot of ways, we're still testing and learning, right? So the core KPIs that we tend to look at are still viewability, fraud, right? Where are we getting quality? But we're also starting to think about page load time, number of slots on the page, really thinking about that user experience at the end of the day.
And so now, how about the channels? What's your
Channels.
mix look like?
I'm gonna go back to yesterday a little bit. There was an analogy of the Swiss Army knife of programmatic, and we've kind of talked about that a lot. I think we are at a tipping point a little bit, at least at Tinuiti in that Swiss Army approach, right? It's not sustainable anymore. It's just too much for any programmatic trader or programmatic campaign manager to know. They have to be an out-of-home expert and a podcast expert and a mobile app expert and cookies and measurement. It's too much. And so we are taking a step back and really thinking about how do we build deep expertise across those channels within the programmatic and display team so that really we can drive those emerging channels that have become so important to clients. At the same time, we are super excited about the access into channels that we have today, whether it's the biggest TV, the biggest screen in the house on the TV, digital out of home, and I know that's been legacy billboards, but we're seeing screens come up everywhere, which again, we tend to be super excited about. The scalability of podcast inventory, right? Being able to reach very niche specific audiences with tailored messaging has all become very interesting. Looking at things holistically, right, and getting that true read on how is my holistic campaign performing and how am I moving dollars across those channels, yes, that continues to be a challenge. Where we are continuing to see, I would say, light at the end of the tunnel is the media mix modeling, but mostly incrementality is where we're starting to move the needle with clients. And yes, it is going back to some of the basics of marketing, geo holdout tests, right, head-to-head markets, but it is able to give us that data, statistical significance, so that we can make those shifts across channels in a semi-real-time basis.
Well, and Nish, I want to go to you with this one in terms of talking about that attribution. When you are doing all these different channels and you're having to tell your clients, it's not just about proving it to yourself. How are you attributing that success and being able to move forward with it?
So, I mean, today a lot of it is still cookie-based, right? Until the cookie goes away, we're still relying on those metrics. We're also looking at doing things like predictive measurement, predictive frequency, so that we're using AI and machine learning to power our decisions. And even if we are, somewhat flying blind in terms of closing that loop, we're still able to, based on the cookie-based set or the attributable data set that we have, we're able to model and at least directionally know, and in most cases, more so than directionally, right? Where we can get pretty close and say, this media is driving an uplift based on, X, Y, whatever your metrics are there. So we're looking at new technologies. We're also, what I've been talking a lot about is that, everything old is new again. So we're pulling out tactics and measurement methodologies that we, put on a shelf years ago because we started depending on cookie-based attribution. And so a lot of those old strategies and tactics are just as valuable today as they were, 5 or 10 years ago, and we're bringing them back into the forefront.
We'll also get a little bit more deeper into that in terms of what techniques are you using or any technology. You talked AI. What else are you doing?
Sure. So we have in-house AI solutions. We have Copilot, which is our modeling engine that we plug in terms of active trading. We're also using similar technology on the back end to pull that data out and look at where campaigns are spending and really in terms of optimization, right? So there's always been this bit of spray and pray approach where you flight something out into market and then see how it performs. You may make adjustments week over week to see ultimately how it's driving your whatever your KPI is. So we're looking at that more frequently, right? And we're looking at that at the start of the plan. So we're saying, here's where we believe that we need to invest based on where we've had success in the past. We're using that to feed our models to then inform where we should buy in the future. We're taking seasonality, other metrics like those into account as we're doing these in-flight optimizations, and then we're taking all of that out and then using kind of big data, right? So we've been moving a lot of our infrastructure into the cloud for years, and now we have these tools. We use a lot of Google services, so BigQuery and ADH, to process all of this in the cloud, so that we're taking, in some cases we're bringing in hundreds or thousands of extra signals that we didn't previously have to make better decisions about how effective our media is.
How about you, Geoff? If you discovered a new technique or any type of technology that is surprising you, that's really working well for you?
I'll kind of hone in on that keyword of predictive. I think really in a lot of ways that is where we're going, right? Knowing less about an audience in that real-time moment, but needing to have the ability ahead of time to predict the likelihood of that particular audience to convert or to take some type of action. And so we have an internal tool called Mobius that is essentially our intelligence layer that pulls and aggregates and cleans and manipulates data across all of the major platforms outside of programmatic, into social and into marketplaces and Amazon, that has allowed us to do some really interesting things and start to pipe that data into artificial intelligence and machine learning, custom algorithm solutions. That's something that we do natively within some of our platform partners, as well as work with other partners to build some of those more sophisticated and complicated models that we've seen perform extremely well, even in the limited, I hate to use the word targeting, but in a limited targeting type of capacity.
No, when you're using all this new technology and new ways, and again, you have to get it by your client. Are they more, as we talked about yesterday, clients are more open because they know cookies are going away? Are they more, at least listening and more open to these changes? Talk about your relationship with your clients. Has that changed at all? Nish, or Geoff, you can start.
Yeah, listen, the clients, they hire us for our expertise and our knowledge in the space, and they've been very open as we look to kind of tackle these things together. When I think about predictive modeling or custom algorithms, it's much more than being able to operate in a cookieless environment or to get better at driving performance. It's changing the dynamic of what it means to run a campaign or to be a programmatic trader, and at the same time, how we service our clients, right? Does the client want the trader in spreadsheets or looking at tons and tons of data all day long, or would they like them to automate that so they could focus on bigger, more exciting things that can continue to drive performance in other areas of the campaign or other facets of their business? And I think that's what's moving the needle more than anything.
Yeah, 100%. So I think the biggest change for us has been that advertisers are more savvy, which has been really welcoming, because it's gone from a one-way conversation where we're suggesting what we think is best for the brand, and now they're saying, and this, I think, this is a really good point from what the Hunter Douglas presentation was about, is that when you bring that expertise in-house, you know the brand and you know what's going on, right? So you have insights that an agency may not have, and so now that the conversation is much more of a conversation as opposed to a presentation, we're getting a lot more insights into what true KPIs are, which is really refreshing.
I want to jump back to you, Geoff, too, as well as when we were talking about different techniques, or you also had mentioned when we spoke on the phone, you were using clean rooms and trade decks. Just can you talk about that a little bit more?
So I feel like that goes a little bit into one of the further questions around scaling on some of those solutions, but yes, more and more we are trying to help our clients, and I think this is the first step before we even get into clean rooms, is getting better at collecting first-party data. I think compliance and privacy is part of it, but there's a tech stack component, there's a consulting component, there's a user experience component. I think that is the biggest challenge, I would say, in the partnership of agencies of clients, is how do we actually figure out how to collect enough quality first-party data so that we can scale in some of these solutions.
Nish, are you finding the same, or?
Yeah, and I think, right, like we've always had these walled gardens where you had to take your data to them to do any sort of analysis or measurement. I think you're going to see larger publishers start to put up bigger walls as data portability, advertisers and platforms are no longer going to control that identification mechanism. And so as publishers start to take hold of that that last step attribution. They're gonna, not let their data go out. They're not gonna have it as portable, right? So you're gonna see, clean rooms are gonna be more and more prevalent as you have to take an advertiser's first-party data and then commingle it inside some sort of safe haven clean room to do analysis. So, it's not just one clean room, right? Like we're gonna see a rise of many, right? And so we're gonna have to develop strategies to kind of bridge all of those clean rooms together to get full measurement, and I think that's one of the interesting challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, and also getting ownership of that data as well. Is that something that you can work into that, or is that still a challenge?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about data ownership, and over the past decade, it's been a really big theme for advertisers to own their own data. I think in the new ecosystem, we're going to see more about data renting or leasing, right? Like you're going to share data. So I'll bring my data, you'll bring yours. We'll do an analysis based on those metrics, and then instead of moving the data out, you'll take the insights and use those insights to power whatever you're doing.
Geoff, you're shaking your head. You agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's absolutely the case.
Nothing to add? Well,
Nish hit it right on the head.
Before we do open it up for you guys to have questions, I always like to find out. So what, you're talking about this new ecosystem. Now that's moving forward. What are you most excited? What have you learned this past year that you're most excited about continuing to do and maybe even, expanding on?
I think we're looking at like things that were really important in maybe like the late 90s when digital advertising was new. Things that really, creative, right? Or having creative that matches the context. Because you're not necessarily buying on 1,000 or 10,000 sites anymore, right? You might be buying on 10 or 20. And so that allows you to tune the creative much more to where it's serving, to the environment, which makes it less jarring. It makes it more welcoming for users. So I think what's most exciting to me is that we're kicking some of our bad habits to the curb, and where hopefully we don't have a whole bunch of new ones that we introduce, and so can clean up the ecosystem a little bit, build more trust between not just our clients but also with users. I think yesterday we were talking about when you're looking at a long tail site on mobile, like 80% of the page of your screen is taken up by advertising, and you're not really getting the content that you want to see. So things like that, as a long tail disappears because some of that, as it is no longer monetized, is not going to be viable as content. So I think some of those things and the fact that like those bad habits are getting washed away is the most exciting.
I was at an index exchange conference. It's probably been 5 years now, and their big thing was that programmatic today was really just the testing ground for TV of the future, and I think that was maybe a little bit bullish. Hopefully we'll get there, but I do think in some ways that it has paved the way for kind of all of the exciting media that we're activating in programmatic today, and it's kind of a cheesy phrase, but we talk a lot about it, and that's just beyond the banner, right? Like banners are not going to move the needle when we're talking about full funnel advertising, when we're talking about penetrating new audiences and changing consideration and changing minds. It's not possible, right? I think that's a real conversation that we've had with clients. Video's been around for a long time. Advertisers have not been leveraging the opportunity in the video space, whether that's activating their first-party data or scaling across these quality environments or being able to reach into the TV. So I think the emerging media is the most exciting thing. We've done a tremendous amount of digital out-of-home this year. We're working very closely with Spotify and the audio partners, not just to run programmatic audio, but to create custom bespoke programs and destinations and playlists on behalf of our clients. And I think everyone can relate, right? Those types of programs are more exciting. We haven't really talked about people or retention, but in the programmatic world, right, allowing these teams to work on things that are not ugly banner ads, chasing cheap inventory and cheap CPAs, and allowing them to work on these fun, innovative ideas has changed the game in terms of even our own employee engagement and our retention metrics. And so I think as an industry, we need to capitalize on this moment and drive and continue the drive into this direction of innovation and immersive media experiences and quality media.
Yeah, totally, right? Like, the best advertising is things that you remember for years, right, or your whole life. I don't know anyone that can tell you a banner that they still talk about. There might be one, right? But there's no one out there saying, like, that banner ad was the best I've ever seen. I'm going to tell all my friends about it, right? That doesn't happen. And I think that's why, like, as we're going into new formats, as we're going into as there's more interactivity everywhere, right? We've gone from static billboards in out-of-home to now fully dynamic video everywhere. I think that's the most compelling thing that we're seeing, right? So advertisers are going to have a much better opportunity to engage with users and engage with users in a much more impactful way.
Great, thank you. So, any questions?
Questions? How about the value of contextual? One, in fact, there was a lead story today, the new research report that talked about that the future of post-cookie advertising would be the hybridization of first-party with contextual.
Yeah, 100%, right? So if you think about behavioral advertising or audience-based advertising, it kind of comes out of contextual advertising. So when big newspapers ran out of inventory on their sports section or on their homepage, they said, well, we can't get you we can't place your ad on the sports section, but we can get you every user who's ever visited our sports page, right? And we'll serve them sports-based content on obituaries, on classifieds, on every other portion of our site. So context has always been the basis of audience, and I think now that we're going back to purely contextual signals and saying, right now the user is looking at sports, or right now they're looking at, looking to buy a house or looking to buy a car, that makes a lot of sense to place a car advertisement there or to place, sports jerseys or something along those lines, right? So as we look at context, I think as we get back into context, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And yeah, definitely, I think there's a hybridization of publisher first-party data that may be surfaced through like a deal ID married with context plus advertiser first-party data that they may have additional signals on those users that when you bring it all together, you get a really compelling set of users that you can message to.
You got, both of you actually are talking a lot about the reemergence of the non-platform publishers in all of this. So I'm curious about how much of a shift you anticipate. Because first-party publishers who we talk to here, because we write about them, they're all saying, we're back, baby. All of this means that finally advertisers are going to realize once again that we were always their best value. We always had closer contact with the consumer than all these platforms. We're back. I'm really curious, from a buyer's perspective, how much of a shift do you see back towards these first-party publishers? I'm not even sure that a lot of these first-party publishers, or these publishers, are ready for this, actually have their first-party data in shape for what you guys want.
I would say so. They never went away, right? So instead of cutting direct deals, right? Like we used to cut an IO, that we started buying them through exchanges. Now, we're still going to transact on them programmatically, but now I think instead of buying them on the open exchange, you'll go through a private marketplace deal or some other, a couple of publishers might commingle and create packages that you can buy. So I think that's where you're going to see first-party publishers be re-engaged, right? And because now you're building, when I'm not buying them through the exchange, I'm building a relationship with them, right? I have to call someone, I have to, build out that deal, which then also opens up that conversation, right? Like, I'm looking for auto intenders. They can say, hey, I don't have auto intenders, but I have auto enthusiasts, right? Mm-hmm. So, you might not get exactly what you want from that publisher, but you'll get something adjacent or in some cases better.
So to add to that, I want to caution publishers, right? We've been here before. This isn't the first time that this was going to be the opportunity for publishers, whether that was the private marketplace coming about, whether it was header bidding, right? All of these things were really, there was a lot of hope that they were really going to help those premium publishers bounce back. And I think they saw a lift in CPM, and overall it was good for the industry, but this is definitely bigger than that. But it's more than just publishers getting their first-party data in order. This is all of us need to come together and actually make this happen. And so it's agencies pushing their clients to be better and to think smarter about how they're investing money. The bigger challenge is internally at clients, right? The way that they've been measuring their media is mostly because that's what the CFO wants to see, and that's how budgets are actually decided, and helping our clients' internal stakeholders make those cases to really change things. We are having a ton of conversation and interest in activating on what we're calling curated marketplace. We did not invent that term, but helping clients go to the market and aggregate quality inventory across those top SSPs so that they can scale outside of the open market and really blend that efficiency with those quality publishers.
Yeah, and I think you've seen a lot of like supply path optimization over the past several years, and this is going to be even more key, right? Like if you're always buying the same publisher, you know, cut a direct deal. It doesn't make sense to always buy on the open exchange.
Hi, I'm Matthew Moqueen with Chegg. I have a question around, do you see, or have anyone done any models on what kinds of increased cost the lack of cookie potentially be if, in essence, you're not prepared, your client's not prepared, the publisher aren't prepared, the fact that you're not able to hit what you want? Have anybody run models about what that added costs are?
So I don't want to speak for the publishers. I think that's a little bit more of a pub side issue, right? That the cookie density has shown to drive higher yield on their side. For us, it's a little bit more advantageous. I have cautioned clients many times, a $3 CPM on data is significant, right? Maybe that's more than what you're actually spending on the media. When you remove that cost, you gain significant efficiencies. And at the same time as artificial intelligence and machine learning and our ability to be more predictive comes about, it really mitigates the concern for the rising cost of media. But I would also argue, you know, the rising cost of media is not necessarily a bad thing, right? I don't mind paying a high CPM if it's driving my ROI.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I don't think we have any hard numbers on the increase of cost, but I agree that, you know, data's been a crutch, and we've used, I don't know if there's necessarily been like a very in-depth analysis of why you use the segments that you use, right? So I think in some cases it's cost, right? This segment's cheaper, this one may perform better, but overall, because you have that crutch, you're not looking at other metrics that may actually drive your CPMs down, right? So like I was saying, if you're always buying a publisher on an open exchange, you might be paying more. If you cut a direct deal, you may be able to get that same inventory for less and not have to apply any data to it.
Well, in about 15, 20 minutes, everybody can join you at the round table to dig deeper into what you guys are doing and what they're doing with measurement. Thank you guys for starting this off very much.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.